Today, we are talking about AI and the photography industry. AI is here. AI is all over. Even if you don't see it, maybe it is happening. I'm telling you right now, which is why I want to have this chat. My intent with this is, by the way, just so you know, not to glorify AI and all that it is. If I could push a big fat red button that eradicates AI out of human history, I would gladly push it, but I can't. I can't do that. The next best thing that I can do is I can equip you listening to this to understand and process and take action so you can at least get in front of it and you don't get caught behind it in our industry. As we go into this, just know that everything I'm about to say is my opinion. And it's also a very loosely held opinion, my loosely held predictions. I am not a prophet. I am just a simple guy using my own discernment, my own wisdom, God's wisdom, and reasoning for what I believe is coming. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I expect is going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years in terms of AI and the photography industry. So what we've seen so far, just to define our terms a little bit, is digital AI. Okay. So AI bots that run on our computers or our phones or apps or things of that nature. When you talk about physical AI, that just isn't mainstream yet. So I'm talking like robots, like the physicality of a actual physical robot. That isn't mainstream yet. That's not widespread yet. So I'm not going to even talk about that because I don't think I don't know how close we are or are not close to that. I don't know. But digital is what I want to talk about today, digital AI, because it is widespread and I believe it is growing at a rapid rate. So here's what I think. You know how every year you book an amount of weddings, right? You have a max that you can take in. Let's say that's 20 weddings or something of that nature. Or let's say if you do more like photo shoots, it's a certain amount of photo shoots. And a lot of the reason behind your maximum workload has to do with what? Not just the shooting of it, but the post workload, the editing, the culling, the exporting, the uploading, the delivering, etc. Right? So here's one of the predictions that I have. Again, I hold this loosely. I don't know. But what I think is about to happen in the photography industry is that work, that post-op workflow will become ultra minimal for us to do with our own I would say bare hands, but with our own click of our mouse. And I think AI is going to dramatically impact that post shooting workload in the next 2 years. So here's how I see this looking in a sense. And this is really interesting too, because a lot of photographers have scaled their businesses this way, but not using AI. But I do think in the future, people will be able to scale their business this way, but using AI and therefore cutting the cost dramatically to scale it. So think about this world. Think about a world in which you could, instead of, let's say, 15 to 20 weddings per year, and then feeling like that's my max, that's all I can take. Let's say your post-op workflow took you like a tenth of the time per project. So let's say you could come home from a wedding and you could take your little SD card or CF Express card, whatever you use, throw it in your MacBook, and then you just pop open whatever bot you have, AI bot, if Claude is still around then, or ChatGPT, whatever it is. And then you just say, hey, Claude, or hey, whoever it is at that time, here's the folder of the photos with in the card that I just shot from this wedding. Cull these photos, pick out the best ones. I want this number, edit these photos for me. And then can you deliver them for me, export them, all the different things, right? So let's say you plug it in and then it starts getting to work for you, right? It has access to your folder. It can do this thing and do that thing. And then it comes back and it says, hey, I got all the culled images for you. You can breeze through them. How does this look, right? And so you look through them. And by the way, some of you are like smiling because you're like, Nate, we already have this. Like we have, we have like after shoot or whatever have you. Yes, we absolutely do have this, but I think it'll be more along the lines of you'll be able to tell a bot, like one bot for everything. Hey, go do this, right? And mind you, I know there are some bots out there right now that can already do these types of things, but I think the vast majority of you listening probably don't use them or maybe even know of them. So you say, hey, can you go call these images in this way? And then it comes back and it says, yep, all finished. Here they are for you. So let's say you breeze through the images. It takes you like 3 minutes, 5 minutes to breeze through the images, approve them. And then you're like, sweet, thanks. Now I'd like you to edit these images. And then it says, okay, sounds good. What style would you like to edit these in? And then you give them like your favorite style and you say, hey, here's kind of the theme I want to keep with this gallery. And then they take it off to the next step and then they edit all the photos. Okay. So again, our out the door time spent here is maybe somewhere around like 20 minutes at this point in total. And then at the end, maybe the next morning, let's say it takes a really long time. I don't know how long these things are going to take in the end. Let's say it only takes an hour or two or something like that, whatever it takes. The bot is going to come back to you and say, hey, all these photos are all edited for you. And then you're going to peruse through them. You're going to approve them or say, oh, this needs a little bit more of this. This needs a little more of this, whatever. It goes back, fixes them. And then it says, okay, do you want me to export? And you say, yep, export. You leave, you go do another thing. And then let's say they're like, hey, do you want me to upload these to PicTime or Pixieset or whatever sharing gallery you use? And then you say, yep, yeah, it'd be amazing. And then they say, do you want me to do a slideshow? And by the way, these things might not even be questions. It might just be like, yeah, give me the usual. And then it does all these things for you, right? And then by the end of it, it's like, hey, all ready to go. Photos categorized into their scenes, slideshow made, music made, email drafted for your client. We're ready to send it off. So let's say out the door, the total amount of time you are taking from getting home, taking your card, plugging it into your computer, and then literally emailing back your clients with like a pre-made template, probably that they would make for you specific to that client. Total time at your desk accumulated would be like 1 total hour, okay, for that entire wedding. I'm telling you right now, this is either close to being a thing, or B, it is already here and you could already be doing these types of things. Now, I don't think for the average person it's going to be easy to set up all of that like I just said, but I'm just telling you this is very close to being a reality in our workflow. And if it's not here yet, I can almost promise you it will be. It will be, probably sooner than we think. So again, when I am thinking of how many people, how many clients, how many weddings, how many projects, whatever it is, I can take on per year, you're thinking of that in a completely different frame because you're not thinking in terms of, oh, this is going to take me such and such hours post-op. It's like, no, the post-op workflow might be like 1/10 of what it used to be. And this is not even to mention all the other sit at your desk tasks that you do that can be done by AI. All right. I'm not even going to go into all of those things, but there's all of those things that can be done by AI eventually, if not done by AI now as well. So as you can see, this can really shift the fabric of an industry when the average photographer is potentially able to take on more weddings per their year, per workload, right? Now, going back to the physical front. So again, we just talked about the digital front, and here's like what I don't see AI impacting in the here and now or the direct future is that shooting, that creating part of things. So you going to a wedding physically and being the physical photographer, the human photographer, right? Like having a droid, for lack of a better word, hey, Star Wars fans, to shoot the wedding, right? Like that, we might get there someday, who knows? But I honestly, that's not on the horizon yet. I haven't seen that done yet. And it's not even remotely mainstream. But I do think that the digital front of it is very much so. It's here already. Here's something that I want to start off with in a recommendation of what I would do now if I were you. And what I would do now if I were you is I would start learning and becoming familiar with the systems of AI that are at your disposal. So things like a lot of you know of ChatGPT, that's a great start, right? Or Claude. If you've never used Claude, I would probably recommend Claude over ChatGPT. It just has a lot more robust systems in it, and I do think it spits out better results. And then I also think you look at different companies that are coming out with AI solutions, even in the photography space. And I would definitely familiarize with these AI solutions because I do think in the end, we're going to end up using them. If we don't use them, I think there's going to be a dimension of we may be left behind. And not only, it's not going to be like, oh, well, it's not going to be as good of art. I really do think, especially in the editing side of things, and it's going to be very comparable, if not better than what human teams can do or human persons can do. And we'll see about that. I'm not really exactly sure, but that's my prediction. And don't get me wrong, there will be a learning curve whenever you use a new AI system. There will be a setup error. It's really interesting. I was listening to Alex Ramosi. He was talking about AI, and he was saying, don't fire, quote unquote, don't fire AI from your workflow or from working for you just because they don't work in the first try. Like, you would never do that to an actual human employee. So don't set such high standards for AI. Like, AI is going to mess up at first. AI needs to learn your ways, needs to learn your systems. So be okay with there being a little bit of a learning curve, because once you learn some of these AI tools, they can really work very well for you. And then in the end, they can give you exponential growth because of that little time you spent setting it up and getting over that little learning curve hump. Okay. On top of that, what I would definitely start spending your time getting good at are three other things outside of just, familiarizing yourself with AI and learning some of these AI solutions. Here's what they are: shooting, and I'm talking photographing, because as I said, I do think that's one of those things that AI is not going to be touching anytime soon. And so, what that means is, if you're distinguishing yourself as a really good photographer based on really good person who can take a really good photo, then AI is probably not going to be able to touch you for that, at least in the here and now. And I think ultimately that back end, that post-op workflow, it's going to get really good for a lot of people. And so there won't be a lot of distinguishing factors in that side of things. But when it comes to the shooting and the photographing, that can still be a huge competitive edge in your business. And now that leads me to the next thing I want to talk about, which is business itself. When you are thinking about what can set me apart, here's the thing: AI or no AI, what is going to be true is that the best business owners, the people who know business the best and understand how business works and the philosophies of business, those who know marketing, those who know sales, those who know branding, those who know money management, money psychology, those are going to be the people who also are going to still succeed even in an AI world, because they know, again, not just how to take a pretty photo, not just how to edit a pretty photo, which a lot of that might be AI. They're going to still know, how do I strategically move all the different pieces in my business, whether AI is impacting it or not, so that I can still succeed in the area that I am based in. The last thing I want you to think about very heavily, we've talked about shooting, the photographing side of things, the business side of things. The third thing I really want you to focus on is client experience and the personal side of your photography business. So think about this. When you think about an AI world, right, there's going to be so much that is impersonal. There's going to be so much that people are going to be weary of. I don't want to work with a robot, or I don't want to have something artificial, right? People want to work with people. I do think that will always be true, that we always will crave human connection. And so what that means is that I think human connection will actually become more scarce, which means that whatever is more scarce in a culture has a higher value. Like the value goes up for the thing that's more scarce. And so I think if you can develop an amazing client experience, an amazing personality, a personhood, a character, so that when people talk to you, they connect so well with you and they're like, we need that person. We need that photographer because I want that human at my wedding day, or I want that human photographing my family, or I want that human in my home photographing our family or my newborn because they put me at ease. They make me feel comfortable. They make me feel special, whatever it is. And I've been preaching this for so long, and I'm telling you right now, it is even going to get more important as we move into this AI world. So again, that's what I would be doing right now. Have your eye on the ball of AI. And then the 3 things below that: get good at shooting and photographing. Business, get good at business. Don't sleep on business. That's why I'm teaching so much business on this podcast. And get also good at that client experience and that personality, that personal brand stuff, because I do think those things are going to set you apart. Now, what wouldn't I do in all of this? Here's what I would not do, is all of the opposite things that I just mentioned above, which would be to completely say, no, I will never touch any AI solution. I'm just telling you right now, I do think that will put you behind if you dig in your heels. I wouldn't do that. I would also not sleep on, hey, I got to get good at photographing, good at being the photographer. Okay. Don't sleep on that. Also, don't sleep on business. For all the reasons I said above, also don't sleep on the power of your personality and your personal brand and your character. Given all of this, here is my unsolicited, loosely held, non-prophetic prediction, okay? I am not saying this is going to happen. I'm just saying here's what I judge, or here's what I expect to happen in the next couple years. And this harks back to something that I already talked about earlier on in the episode. And it's that photographers have always been limited by the backlog, the post-op workflow, right? I believe this is going to go away in the next couple years, like very soon on the horizon. And in one sense, that is very exciting in many ways, because so many of us are just like stuck behind, this huge editing log, right? Like, how many photographers do we know who we all are like, I'm always stuck behind the computer editing log, and that's what bogs me down. Think about, again, if you could sit down at your computer, plug in your SD card, say, hey, can you do this, this, and this? And then the bot takes it away from there, gives you minimal interactions to make sure that they're on the right track. But in the end, they get you to a place within like an hour or 2 hours of you sitting at your desk, accumulated time, and they're ready to deliver that product to the client, gallery finished, email template written, and it's all ready to go. What world would that be like? Is that all bad? Yes, it's going to change things, but is that all bad? I think there is something that is exciting about that. Now, here's what I think that's going to do. I think that, again, instead of 20 weddings per year, a photographer may start taking on more like 40 weddings per year. And I think it will become less of a time limitation and more of actually a physical strength limitation. Like, I don't know about you, but taking like 70 weddings per year, even if I don't have to do the backlog of them, that's like 70 Saturdays. There's not even 70 Saturdays in a year, but you know what I'm saying? That's like 70 full days throughout the year where you're like standing up for 10 hours of them, right? And so I do think it's going to be more of a physical strength and stamina limitation in many ways, or just like a mental load of how many clients can I keep up with and actually serve them well still, even though my post-op workflow doesn't take me a long time. Another thing that I do see shifting dramatically is going to be the speed of delivery. the speed of delivery with which someone delivers the client gallery will become much more important. And by the way, I don't think we're here quite yet, but I believe that the AI culling and editing that I'm talking about will be virtually indistinguishable, if not better, from a personal human photographer hand editing each photo or hand culling each photo. Again, maybe not to the photographer, but to the client. I do think the client will have a very hard time distinguishing what could have been done by AI versus what could have been done hand by a personal photographer. And just, I'm going to be so for real with you, what the client thinks is ultimately what matters. Even if you have like a marginal difference in your eye that you see difference between what you could do versus what AI can do. And for that reason, by the way, some purists will dig in their heels. They will refuse the AI solutions. They will hand cull to a fault. They will hand edit everything to a fault. And I say this so softly, but I do think they will get left behind. Or they will have to figure out, if not getting left behind, they'll have to figure out another way to create such a niche market for themselves where that hand delivery, that hand editing, that hand handling will be highly valued. And I'm not saying it can't be. Maybe it very well could be. I don't know. Because again, there's going to be another certain A+ photographer who will say, listen, I shot your wedding on Saturday. I'll get you your photos back by Monday morning because of AI. And then there's going to be another second A+ photographer, equal talent in both buckets. And that second A+ photographer is going to say, I'm not going to get back to your photos until 6 to 8 weeks. And here's the deal. The client most likely is not going to notice a difference in the final product. So who will the average client pick? Again, I don't think we're necessarily there yet, but I do think we will get there. And I think you'll see, if you can remember and you recall what happened when we went from film to digital. Obviously, that was way before a lot of our times. That was before my time, but I can still look up the history of it. And you will see a lot of those same things happen, where it's like the film purists back in the day were like, I'm going to dig in my heels. I'm not going to adapt. And then the people who embraced digital were like, bring it on. Let's do this. We can do this faster. We can do this quicker. We can do this more efficiently. We can even get better photos back because we take more, right? So again, there will always be some who adapt, some who will not. And I know some will get mad at me for saying this, but all of this in my prediction, what I see this actually doing on a general scale is I think this will naturally thin out the industry in a way, because there will be, and I say this so hesitantly because I don't want this to come off discouraging to anybody, but I do wonder if in that type of a world where each photographer is able to take on more weddings or more projects per year, then it makes me think that there will be less projects, less weddings to go around, like less excess work. And so I think what will happen is a lot of the work will gravitate towards whoever becomes the highest performers. And there will be again, less excess work to go around, and less like photographer to photographer referrals. Like, hey, I'm just going to send you this referral because I can't take any more weddings for the year. I think you'll see less of that, unless it's just like, hey, I already have that date booked and I'm going to give you this referral because I have that date booked. And then B, I think the successful photographers will be able to make higher revenue than maybe ever was possible before in the photography industry, or at least for a time, which, by the way, is really exciting because we might see some photographers who are able to make some really cool money because, again, they will be able to take on more contracts without the massive post workload, but maybe like double their income for the year. Here's the opportunity. I think that there will be a massive first mover advantage to photographers who do adapt with AI, photographers who know business, photographers who know how to shoot well and do their art well, and photographers who invest in their client experience and personal brand. That's just my blind prediction, which, by the way, all of this could very easily be wrong. So that's why I say it so loosely. So don't come for me in the comments and be like, you're so wrong or blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, maybe I am wrong. I don't know. And also don't come for me in the comments and be like, Nate, I can't believe you love AI. I do not love AI. Okay. I cannot say that like enough. I am not AI's best friend over here. I truly am just trying to tell you, this is what I believe is coming, whether we like it or whether we don't. All right. And for my listeners, I want to make sure that if you're listening to me, if you trust me, I want you to get a head start on these things. I want you to be caught at the front of the pack, not at the back of the pack where you might get stuck. Right? Now, I'm going to give you a finishing story to finish this up. And we talked about this a little bit. A pivot like this happened in the history of photography before. Okay. So there was a time when Kodak was a camera brand and Canon was a camera brand and Nikon was a camera brand. Now, which one are we not super familiar with these days anymore? Kodak. And you know what? There's a reason for that. There's a reason that we all use Canon and Nikon still, or Sony, but we don't use Kodak anymore. Do you know why? Because there was a core problem during that shift that I was talking about from film to digital. The core problem was that Kodak knew digital was coming. They actually invented digital, okay? But they were making enormous margins at that time on film and consumables, so things like paper, chemicals, printing. And the digital world threatened their entire revenue model. So every time digital came up internally, the film division just like killed it, just squashed it. So then by the time that they actually took digital seriously in the camera world, they had already lost too much ground and way too much time. And they eventually filed for bankruptcy in 2012. Super sad, right? Like they just didn't pivot. They didn't adapt. They sat on what they knew. They sat on what they knew was coming. And they're just like, we're just going to dig in our heels and we're not going to move forward with it. Now, let me tell you another story of Canon and Nikon. Canon and Nikon were already major players in the film era as well. But instead, they made the transition well to digital because they had a very strong lens ecosystems that carried over very well. And Canon was actually the more aggressive mover of the two from film to digital. They had actually been investing heavily in things like autofocus and electronic integration into their cameras in the 80s, which by the way, this is kind of when this all took place, which is why this is before a lot of our time. And this turned out to be amazing groundwork for digital. So when the shift came from film to digital, Canon's cameras were already electronically sophisticated, even more than Nikon's, which gave them a huge head start. But the key distinction that I want you to take away from Kodak and how Canon and Nikon did it is this. Digital didn't destroy Canon and Nikon's business model, but it destroyed Kodak's. Canon and Nikon were able to sail into the next era of technology with ease. Kodak was not, because Kodak saw the future and they just rejected it. They said, I don't want to move. I don't want to get in the weeds of that. We're just going to sit on it and act like it's not there. And then they paid for it. All this to say, do not ignore the changes coming to your industry, even technologically, even stuff you don't want to happen. Learn what you can, embrace what you can. Don't fight every single thing tooth and nail that doesn't need to be fought. Choose your battles. There are certain things about AI I don't think you should integrate into your business. There's certain things about AI that as a human population, as a species, even as you and your brain, that you should not let AI steal from you. Seriously. I cannot stress that enough. But I also want to stress, choose your battles, baby. Like, take some good AI weapons in the arsenal that's being offered to you these days and use them to fight off the bad AI weapons or the bad AI solutions that aren't good to be using. And then I'll just say this, trust God with the rest and use discernment. So thank you so much for listening, you guys. Again, this is just my thoughts. These are just things that are popping in my mind these days. I wanted to bring you up to speed with it. And if you guys have more comments on this conversation, leave them in the comments section or, I don't know, DM me, talk about it. So thank you so much for listening, you guys, and I will see you back here next time.